Hello, everyone, and welcome to this free episode of TF. It is me, Riley. I am joined in studio by Hussein.
Hi. Hello. What's up?
And I am joined in TF Glasgow Towers by Alice.
It's the free one.
It is. And that is who we've got for you today. You can tell because no one is yelling over me in a dumb radio voice and doing
no one's doing an accent.
Yeah, that's right. We have banished
no
Milo.
one's like introducing characters from Family Guy over a period of about 20 minutes in a way that incapacitates every single one of us.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like none of us can really do voices. I was sort of tempted to do a kind of like Melvin Bragg style, like, hello, it's the free one. Except that's not really Melvin Bragg. It's not.
I guess I could do you like an old newsreel, like, yeah, it's the free one. It's like
that's a good attempt, man. That's a good,
British movie tone. Pathé presents the free one.
It's the free one.
Milo has been banished to the lagoon. However,
where he belongs.
Yeah,
he's forming a more equitable society over there. The fucker.
But we've got a little bit of news for you of startup, and then of course we're going to be talking about some more AI. First piece of news. Ladies and gentlemen, we got it. That's right. The transgender rights campaigners and advocates for Russia,
me and my friends in Russia have finally enacted something we long thought was impossible, some measure of consequences for sexual misconduct within the realm of British media. This being Observer columnist Nick Cohen and his downfall.
So long has this been known and I believe actively and institutionally covered up by The Guardian and Observer, where Nick Cohen worked.
Long has it been posted about? And not to like give fucking like left Twitter any credit for anything ever, but like this was something that was talked about quite openly on social media and notably was not responded to with any kind of like legal threats. Because it was true.
So, and of course, what had to happen to bring out this kind of secret in the very sort of cloistered and chummy world of UK media was, as usual, the New York Times has to just look at Britain and then see what is obviously fucking going on here and just be able to, and it's like the New York Times, that's the one place where it is compelled to tell the truth about.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting,
curious, isn't it?
Yeah. So Jane, who wrote the story and who I know a little bit from like previous like working in similar places, is a British reporter, and so she works for the London bureau of the New York Times. But and it's not to sort of say that like the point is invalid, but it's more just like it's very interesting that even like a British journalist who has sort of been around for like a long time and been established for a long time, the only way that they could do this story was through an American outlet. Because like the big part of the story is also that the Financial Times had this scoop about Nick, and they had the details, and like the thing that made it a story was that like the Financial Times I think had 8 women who had come on record to like say this guy, or 8 women who had kind of said that like this guy had like has been exhibiting like these harassing behaviors and has been doing so for a long time. And the Financial Times were the one that were like, yeah, he's not really enough of a business guy to like for us to do the story, which is like number one is bullshit, but I think very emblematic of this like how cloistered British media is to the point where like you just need a US outlet to actually tell kind of proper stories about what is actually happening in Britain, and people still getting mad about it. Like, you know,
of course.
lots of people being like, why is the New York Times like berating our like sexual harassment?
Hadley Freeman, the Guardian's own Woody Allen correspondent, said that it was an example of sort of like the pretended cultural superiority of Americans, that they were publishing this, and that it was very which, come on. The thing that always confuses me about this, though, right? And I know it's just regular patriarchy. I know it's just regular institutional misogyny. But no one can seem to explain to me why it's worth circling the wagons, like, to this extent for Nick Cohen. I've read his columns.
Who is now a Substacker.
Yes.
For a Substacker they just are still friends with.
What value does he add beside being friends with them that it makes sense for them to like build the 14-foot wall concrete bunker around him?
Well, I think the truth is he knows secrets. That's my feeling.
You think he has like compromat just by virtue of like being
I don't know if it's compromat, but what I do know based on like kind of again sort of knowing circles that he is associated with, is that like in terms of like the British media landscape, and this isn't just like newspapers, it's also like it's like panels on radio shows. It is kind of being on the board of like certain kind of like quote unquote free speech organizations. But yeah, I like it's the stature that I think kind of really sort of sets him as being kind of different in the sense of not necessarily being like a Tyson of journalism by any means, but like really someone who really acknowledges that like longevity is about like staying, like kind of being part of all these other sort of
going to the right
bodies,
parties, knowing the right people. Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing I would say, and this sort of ties into another thing that's in the news, which is a Labour MP getting the whip suspended, and then we don't know what other sort of like criminal sanctions might follow from this for like also being a creep towards women. And it just strikes me that this is, it's not a surprise to anyone, but this is absolutely ubiquitous in British politics, British media, across a wide spectrum of it. And just the reflexive urge to cover up and to excuse is just it's quite something. It's absolutely craven, and it's the kind of thing that you can do these sort of like gotcha tweets that don't matter at all but are very instructive, where you look at the people who are now defending Nick Cohen and you can show them their old columns where today it will be, oh well, he was an alcoholic at the time. 6 months ago, a column about how like toxic men will use alcoholism to excuse their own actions, stuff like this.
Well, I think we can also notice right before we move on as well that, as you sort of alluded to earlier, Alice, he now has a brigade-sized element of the UK's columnist bathroom cops sort of providing cover around these circled wagons.
The trans angle was interesting too, because like the New York Times, obviously no friend to trans people, but what they did do was they permitted their journalists to ask one follow-up question, which is one more than British media will let you do. And so when they called Nick Cohen about this, and they were like, how do you respond to these allegations? He immediately sort of responded with your characteristic like bluster of, well, I have many enemies, such as the trans rights activists and Russians. And they asked him the one more question, which was, okay, what about the other 7 women? And he went, fuck.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. The art of the
Perfect
single
interview.
Follow-up question.
The art of the interview,
All right. Let's move on. Elon Musk, of course, as well in the news for his brain chip firm Neuralink having received approval from the US FDA to conduct tests on humans. That's right. He is no longer going to be murdering apes. He is instead going to be murdering some slightly less intelligent Twitter Blue users.
He's climbing his way up the like hierarchy of simians, and now he's gonna kill some humans. I don't do this. Don't trust Elon Musk with your brain. Do not let... I mean, this is the thing. He's tried to do it with posting for years. He bought Twitter to try and do it, and it didn't work. He has finally, at long last, found a way of living rent-free in someone's head.
I just think it's funny that he hasn't killed enough monkeys.
No, he's killed like 1,500 monkeys. That's so many monkeys. And then the FDA apparently were like, that's the last monkey who will ever get killed by this.
Yeah, there's a guy in the FDA that fucking hates monkeys. And they're like, yeah, this is good, actually. Yeah. I'm looking forward to like people just malfunctioning for like no reason. In the same way that like Teslas do. Like they'll sort of be, and like the only way to fix them is, I don't know, fucking turn them like horizontal. Like that's the only way to make them function. So I think
people are just going to start randomly bursting into flames, but they're going to be doing a sort of a dance from like a meme dance from 2017. They're going to be doing the Fortnite floss dance.
This is also like connected, because I feel like what Elon has sort of tried, like understood from his Twitter venture is that like, even though he's bought the platform and rigged it in favor of all the blue checks, none of them are actually laughing at any of his jokes. Like if you look at him when he makes a joke online, you look at the replies to them. These are all people who are just kind of like advertising shitcoins at him. Like he is being spammed by the people who are paying him. It's insane. And so I imagine my feeling is the whole like brain chip thing is so that he can finally create people who he can like directly beam his posts to, and they will laugh in the real world. Like they'll imagine a post, they'll see the post that he's put out in their brain, and they'll go, haha, that's so funny.
Like he'll be able to force you to picture like a Bad Luck Brian or one of those other 2009 era 9gag memes.
But you know what's really funny is the greatest proponents and only adopters of Neuralink will 100% be the same people who used to post the like NPC Wojak meme where it's like slotting a chip into the head.
The other thing is, right?
Yeah, it's good now.
The technology of a brain-computer interface, it's not necessarily like bullshit. Like this is allowing like paralyzed people to walk.
And anything to do with like the biological functions of the brain is gonna be a little bit body horror anyway, because brains are just like that. But the main thing that I don't trust about this is Elon Musk. You should not either.
You should not give Elon Musk a way to make you dream of new and improved Ron DeSantis Twitter space. Do not give him that ability.
Stop saying things. I hate this so much.
Or anytime you think like a slightly negative thought, like, oh, I'm out of peanut butter, you get to hear his voice saying, concerning.
Looking into it, yeah. Interesting.
Fun.
God's sake. Yeah, why do I feel so strangely about like emeralds now?
It says, announcing Thursday's news on Twitter, Neuralink talked of an important first step that will one day allow our technology to help many people. One day. And this is so he was, if you recall, also Musk has been saying that this is going to be in people's heads by 2020. And again, like, he's going to have no shortage of people signing up to it, but the problem is going to be finding where to plug the chip in. You're just going to keep drilling. It's going to be, how much skull is there here? It just keeps going. I just got, biologically, there has to be a brain in here somewhere. All right.
No,
all right.
I feel this is very cyberpunk in a bad way.
Well, it's because one thing Cyberpunk usually does, right, is that the corpo leaders, you know, the like Arasaka or whatever, they're usually represented almost like a daimyo, right?
Sure.
They are serious and to be taken seriously. They're grim, and you know, they'll kill without a moment's compunction. Like they are stony-faced killers. Elon Musk is
there's some golf there.
Yeah, he is not a kind of like, you know, a corpo titan. He's sort of just a clown who's danced his way to the top of the cyberpunk dystopia.
And what's weird is he keeps orbiting those people. Like, remember a few months ago when we said that Tim Apple was going to have him bone sword for buying Twitter? Tim Apple is a corporate daimyo. He is like 100% that guy in a cyberpunk setting. You would have to change very little. You put some like weird electronic shit on the side of his face, and that's it. Elon Musk? I mean, not so much.
Yeah. So, very excited for the slight twist on the world of Cyberpunk 2077 that still has 55-year-old memes all over the place.
Yeah, the guy who did those oatmeal comics is, you know, his head is going to burst into flames in a public place, and we're just going to kind of note that and move on, I guess.
Looking into it.
Yeah, you're never gonna. Yeah, that's the sort of giant blimp that has the laser skywriting on it. It's just the words "looking into it." All right, let's talk about a startup. The startup is called Wondercraft. Wondercraft AI specifically.
Huh.
What do you
Wondercraft
think?
AI. Does it? Are we 3D printing little like items here? Little desk toys?
No. It doesn't 3D print anything physical.
Does it have something to do with clip art?
Not clip art.
No, not okay. So it's something related, but not quite clip art.
I wouldn't say
Give
it's
me
a
a
visual.
hint.
Okay. All right. Blank reinvented.
That's not a hint. That's the opposite of a hint. Fuck you. Art, I guess.
Start your blank today.
I was just thinking woman. It's like it's an
Start
invention
your woman
of
today.
Start your woman today.
Like an outboard motor, like you like grab and pull. Like,
well, I'm wondering whether it's like a type of you can so because a lot of these AI guys are like obsessed with like AI girlfriends and stuff. So is this a service that like allows you to make a bespoke girlfriend in the same way that you can make a World of Warcraft character?
Not a girlfriend, no. Here, let me carry on a little bit. Create your own studio quality.
Could still be a woman. Could still be a studio quality
studio
woman.
quality woman. Podcast.
That's the one.
No, fuck! I was joking.
We're out of a job. We're out of a job.
It's coming for our jobs.
It's over.
Fucking jobs are being automated. It's the most over it's ever been.
Yeah, our precious phony baloney jobs are being
like I
by
was
the AI.
fine laughing when it was all of your phony baloney jobs. Now it's my phony baloney job on the line. I'm Eliezer Yudkowsky pilled. We got to start doing airstrikes on all AI chips. Large language models should be as illegal as being a member of ISIS. You can't do this to me. I need this job.
So, create studio quality podcast in seconds, powered by AI. And this isn't just some like random little tool someone's worked up that can do a few seconds. It's backed by Y Combinator to the tune of quite a bit of money,
God.
it is it's already sort of up and running.
They've already automated Joe Rogan. They've been doing it for 6 months. You didn't even notice. Anytime you think you hear him say, wow, that's not Joe Rogan. That's the large language model. Joe Rogan is in like the sub basement getting tortured.
Yeah, they're just trying to wring the last dopey question out of him.
Yeah.
So here's what it says. You can clone your own voice. Just share a 60-second recording of your own voice and enjoy seamless podcast creation with your own personal touch.
I mean, I do think about the fact that like hundreds, if not thousands of hours of my voice are just out there on the internet for anyone to do what they want with.
Don't remind them of that.
You can make anyone
security
say,
measure for those.
hey, you can make any of us say whatever you want, and you can take that information however you like to.
Yeah. Well, this is why it's important.
But you shouldn't also. Don't be a fucking creep. Like, just leave it alone.
This is why it's very important that we always have a little bit of overtalk, so you can't isolate any of our audio cleanly.
Yeah.
I think it's very important now that we sort of like talk a little bit, like we sort of like speak with like higher or lower octaves than usual.
Yeah,
in order
have a
for our
show
own
voice
protection.
rather than your
Like,
regular voice. My defensive technique.
The rest of shows like this.
Yeah. My defensive technique is I'm never going to say any of the phonemes that are used in any slur, so you can't recombine them to make me say a slur.
I'm only speaking like in consonants from now on.
Yeah.
So
I'm skipping like every third syllable.
So you also let AI write your script. So just write a few bullet points that you want your episode to be about, feed it to the AI, and let it take care of the rest.
I mean,
Choose your language.
I have a nuanced position on this, right? Which is you can and should do this to me, but only after I die. I am thoroughly in favor of the kind of like wringing out of like people's like when Hollywood uses like dead actors' faces and stuff. I love that shit. That's hysterical to me.
So the future is like even if you're dead, like you'll still be able to meet your sort of podcasting schedule.
Yeah. What I want to happen, if I God forbid, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? I want you all to have to put up with AI Alice for as long as the podcast lasts.
Yeah, we all just slowly get hit by buses, or Milo gets
get
a Neuralink
slowly
put
hit
in.
by a bus. Yeah,
gradually.
The sort of office pool of which member of TF is most likely to first get a Neuralink.
Yeah, I think it's Milo. He's definitely gonna get a Neuralink. So introducing Wondercraft AI. Today marks an exciting day for podcast enthusiasts. There's never been one of those. And content creators everywhere as we introduce Wondercraft AI, the platform that turns your written content into high-quality podcasts in seconds.
Wait. Hold on. I figured this out. We own our own means of production, right? So we can just automate our own jobs. We can just set AI Riley and AI Hussein and AI Alice talking, fuck off to the pub, put the episode out, charge as usual for it. I'm in favor of this now.
Okay, if ever the episodes that come out in the future seem a little bit odd or different or somehow in the uncanny valley,
Riley,
that's
as
a new
large
joke.
language model, I actually can't respond to that.
Isn't the risk also that if you get all the AIs of each of us to talk to each other, that could be a bit risky. I feel like you need some humans, right, to just like sort of keep it in check, but it's a really dangerous position to get all of our AIs sort of like
it could get really surreal. They could end up talking about the founding myth of Venice for like half an hour.
Yeah, but I mean, realistically, like what this actually is, right, is it is the same like large push by venture capital that now that it's noticed that it can actually more easily recreate creative or creative adjacent industries rather than say like, I don't know, financial research, right?
Sure.
That those things that people thought were going to be very automatable are actually quite tricky to automate. And the things people thought were going to be difficult to automate are actually easy to automate if you don't care if it's good, basically.
Sure.
That this is basically the effort, as always, is not being aimed at podcasters. It's being aimed at podcast studios and podcast networks. And the idea being like, the fantasy that we see over and over and over and over again with all of these products is that you can have an artistic project that's just notes, right? That you can, instead of having to write a script, instead of having to have people sitting at microphones, instead of having to have microphones, instead of having to have on a movie set or whatever, you can just be it. Because what does an executive do? Is they do cocaine and they give you notes. And it's just, what if the entire process was just the giving of notes? That's it.
One of the things I was completely right is that like the people who I imagine will be quite shafted by this are kind of freelance producers, like people who sort of make like lots of, because I did a bit of like corporate podcasting production work during the lockdown. And it was like a very soul destroying process where again it was very much like a guy gave me notes and gave me shitty audio to work with, but at the time, like, people were speaking on those podcasts. Those people, they really didn't want to do it. They were very begrudgingly doing it because someone in their sort of like PR content department or whatever was like, hey, we sort of need to do this for some reason because everyone else is. And this kind of feels like the logical extension of like their selling point is like, well, everyone else is making podcasts, so you should do the same. But also like, here's a way of basically doing it for the sake of doing it. So it's like, it's not creating podcasts for podcasts, like genuine podcast lovers, like in quotation marks. It is really just there to kind of produce a very, very cheap product very quickly that like no one really cares about.
AI producing a cheap product quickly that no one can come on.
You're saying that it's not coming for us, it's coming for the like, I don't know, Pinkerton Insights sort of.
It's coming for it's coming for like the fucking
KPMG's
I don't know, like the
internal
the HSBC podcast advert that I saw this morning on the tube. Where one of the advertisements for it was like, how can you feel like you're a worthwhile employee in your workplace? Listen to this podcast that will tell you all the answers. And so I listened to that podcast because I wanted to find out the answer of how I can be a meaningful contributor to the company that I work for. And in the 15 minutes that I was on there were no mentions of like, union joint. There was not even any mentions of like teamwork. One of the bits of advice it did give out was if you come in half an hour early and stay half an hour late, you can have a conversation with your boss's boss, and that can help you in your career. And that's also one reason why it's really good to go back into the office.
Yeah. It would be very funny to me if just like
awesome
apropos
podcast.
of nothing, one of those sort of like very workshopped, very corporate podcasts that no one really listened to just sort of adopted the styles of like Us or like the Adam Friedland show. Like you're listening to like the KPMG like workflow tips podcast, and they're doing like slurs chat.
they're doing the extended lagoon riff. The other thing I see here as well, right, is it's part of this larger trend of what the AI people imagine other people want to hear. You know,
and the answer is, of course, JP Morgan Chase presents Starve and Adam. Like,
it's the answer is JP Morgan Chase presents like Socrates and Einstein giving their drop shipping insights.
Oh, I've seen these, and they're such dog shit. Like,
because right there, the idea is, and this is more of I think this is more of something that's thought of by AI boosters and AI hucksters rather than like serious AI people.
Sure,
which is
the Lyle Lanleys of this world.
Of course. And the idea that you're going to somehow be able to distill from their writing the essence of Socrates and Einstein and have more than just 2 SparkNotes pages being read at one another. Right, and that anything is going to go beyond just the barest surface level that will be beyond some kind of key jingling is again laughable and goes to show how little any of the people who are really excited about this stuff actually understand fucking anyone.
I'm so excited to listen to like PricewaterhouseCoopers presents epic rap battles of history.
So this is a blog post from Wondercraft. As we ventured into launching Wondercraft just a month ago, a question loomed over us. What are the ingredients that make a podcast resonate with audiences?
Well, first you need to have a racist guy.
Yeah. Is it the charisma of the hosts? Is it the caliber of guests they invite?
I can assure you from personal experience, neither of those matter at all.
It's bits. You need bits.
Yeah.
You need bits.
The depth and relevance of the topics discussed, or perhaps the
deep podcast.
Yeah, or perhaps the regularity with which episodes are released. Now, based on the fact
and girth of topics discussed.
Yeah, the based on what product these guys are selling, which answer do you think they land on?
I reckon regularity.
That's the one. Yep, that's what decides. It's just is it out every day at the same time? Who cares what's in it? Is it there?
I don't know if they're entirely wrong about that.
Yeah.
I look at, well, there's your problem, and it's, let's say, be charitable and say irregular release schedule, and think, I don't know. Sometimes people like stuff that isn't such a high production value. Now, granted, it is that way because that's the production value we have in stock, but like, even so, getting a sort of like highly machined podcast about like, I don't know, Socrates giving you business secrets of the pharaohs or whatever. I don't know. I just don't see it.
Well, you know, you've pointed out something that I didn't think about, which is that people are different. And when people listen to podcasts, they listen to it for different reasons rather than for one reason.
Well, like so many things, right? These guys only know how to make products for one another. Right? That's why every time you see like and I always think about Twitter for this, which is how the people, including Jack Dorsey, right, how they always like to imagine Twitter being used, or any of these social networks, or any of these products, right? Even like Uber, right? It's only imagined as being used, driven by and for basically middle-class people at least, because they cannot imagine that many sort of social levels away from themselves. Is that they are imagining a podcast, and they created one as a trial, as a proof of concept, they just copied and pasted the top stories from Hacker News, which is also owned by Y Combinator, which is why they could do that, and then put it into their little box, had it summarize them, put the bullet points into the podcast, and then AI generated a podcast that summarized the top stories on Hacker News, and that's their like big proof of concept, which is that they can create a thing that can deliver an audio summary so long as someone else has actually written the thing. But with so many of these, let's say, bits of, let's say on Hacker News or other bits of journalism, more of those are going to start getting generated by AIs. And
we're getting into Jason's thing about Habsburg AI. Where it's like it becomes so incestuous and self-referential that it like loses the ability to be normal.
Well, I've seen this referred to, because one of the ways a lot of academics talk about AI is they talk about it as analogous to a human brain. And so they'll talk, so AI, when it is confidently wrong about something, they'll talk about it as hallucinating. And as AI copies too many things that have also been generated by AI, the further it actually abstracts from any human labor, right? To write something even, the more it gets what this paper refers to as dementia.
Oh, cool.
And that happens very fucking quick, right? You don't... And also, it's like you haven't... At no point have they actually made anything new. The actual thing is just recapping something else. Once again, you know, you have some pretty impressive audio production technology, but you cannot escape the fact that without someone actually doing something, someone else actually doing something, you have nothing. All you have nonsense.
Also, social trust. Like, that's one reason. Like, we joke about parasociality, right? But like, us being familiar to the audience, sort of like, there's a connection there that you're not getting with, you know, AI voice number 3. Or whatever.
Also, even for like,
maybe you would do. Maybe you want to be like fucking like the guy in Her, and you're like, you want to fuck the AI voice number 3. I don't know.
But even the like tech guys who will sort of likely kind of boost this for some reason, like even the podcast that they like, the reason why they like it is not really because of the show. It's because like they follow these guys on Twitter, and you know these Twitter guys are now doing a podcast, and that's kind of, you know, a fun thing. Like, their show is not fun by any means, but it's kind of like even the logic behind this doesn't fit with how these guys actually kind of consume media. So really, it's just kind of there. So it exists for the purpose of like, oh look, we can kind of do a thing, and it doesn't really matter if like that thing is kind of counterintuitive to how like the industry sort of works, or like how people who actually work in podcasting, as in like making a living out of it, what they actually do. All that matters is that it exists. And so even if like the Bill Gates talking to Socrates weird podcast that like is just very jarring and doesn't make sense, like even if that is not going to really be listened to by anyone serious, like its existence is enough to justify it, is effectively what seems to be the kind of guiding philosophy behind these, like behind this guy.
It's the same kind of impulse that leads you to want to demonstrate how smart you are by saying you've read the dictionary, because it's the book with the most variety of words in it, right? It is at every point. It is the appearance of depth. Even with this, the example of the Hacker News summary podcast, it is nothing but the appearance of content. You're still just putting your veneer over something someone else has done. So what they say the success of the Hacker News recap is indicative of a broader potential, that anyone can step into the world of podcasting. With Wondercraft's technology, professional podcasting expertise, or a captivating voice is no longer a prerequisite.
But
all
like,
that's needed...
that was one of the things that's one of the things I like about podcasting, is the barrier to entry is relatively low. Like, okay, there's improvements you can make, like on the sort of like, you know, the top end or whatever, but like, you can start doing this with like a laptop microphone and like cheap headphones.
Well, what they say is all that's needed is content of value, right? And what that story is about, once again, is the fantasy of the executive who no longer needs to have anybody working for them to produce a piece of media. Right. But then that fantasy, like, you still need you can never do away with the person entirely, or your AI very quickly starts like buying 100 gallons of milk and pissing in the closet.
Yeah, you remember the sort of the like the Wall-E thing, the fear that like humans are going to become like very dependent on AI, and you know, once it's sort of like operating on its own, it just outpaces us. It seems like the opposite happens. It's like once it starts relying on itself, it falls down. Doesn't have the juice, doesn't have the spark, you know?
Well, thus far, at least. But to me, that also, right, this also relates to the whole idea that, Jason fucking Kalkanis was talking about this, right? It's like, oh yeah, with AI, I can see what happens in Succession when Tom runs the company. It's like, awesome. Like, there is no rest of the show. There's no rest of the Mona Lisa. It ends at the frame. It ends at the end credits. And it goes back to like...
Art is a sort of like process of curation and of like deciding where stuff ends, if it means anything. Like,
and what this kind of impulse of applying this to any kind of creative activity is it's trying to allow the curator and the creator to swap places by making the creator you can just say, I like Succession, I'm going to curate myself, and I'm such a good curator of it, I'm going to curate myself another episode because I can describe what I would like. And that's why
Check this shit out. I just made AI imagine the rest of Michelangelo's David, and it's like a marble cube.
That's why it's AI generation is the anti-printing press, because it makes actual communication impossible. But it's also the anti-art because it makes discerning, because it destroys a piece of art and turns it just into another bit of content. And it confuses and it muddles all the human element of it by making it impossible to discern it. I mean, it's the same impulse that leads Disney to keep milking the same IP to glup shitify everything. It's the glup shitification of all that exists. Anyway. I want to go on about AI, but I want to leave Wondercraft behind for now.
Until it takes all of our jobs.
Yeah, I would like to leave Wondercraft well behind at the bottom of a large well where it can't hurt anyone.
The positive news is that for situations where Milo is away, we can simply just implement the AI Milo.
That's true.
So listeners will never have to go an episode without a sex noise of some kind.
Yeah, without we haven't seen some of the old classic characters in a while. AI Milo, AI Milo, deploy, Jerk Vanderclerk. Okay, all right. So the other thing I want to talk about, of course, is the artificial intelligence scare-vertising drive is continuing. And it now has demonstrably worked on the UK. So I'll start with this. The Center for AI Safety has released another statement, which has been signed on to now by not just that last group of people who signed on to the previous statement from, I think, another AI institute, including like Elon Musk and others. This one includes signatories who are quite serious, such as Sundar Pichai. It includes Elon Musk. It doesn't include Elon Musk specifically. It includes Sam Altman. It includes the bomb the data centers guy as well. What's his fucking name? Yeah, it includes him and the thousands of academics. And the statement says, it's very short. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemic and nuclear war. And number one, again, like this has to be seen, in my view, as these guys advertising their product, and also saying to.
I mean, we're sort of like alive to the possibility of AI doing bad shit here, I would say. But what strikes me is it's a problem of like frame of reference, right? We can only sort of talk about it in terms of like it's going to do Skynet, and not in terms of like it's going to make the self-driving car kill your nan or whatever.
And so this is also right. Remember that these guys, this group of executives, is kind of doing the global government tour, or at least the sort of Western government tour. And they got all, and then they spoke before Congress a few weeks ago. They got all the real U.S. politicians to listen to them, and they agreed it was too important for Greg Steube to do his dog and pony show. They didn't get like the Make-A-Wish Congress people to come and and see that particular.
This time we got the guys who know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and everyone agreed, and the same thing is happening here, where after meeting Sunak and after meeting several Labour frontbenchers. Once again, everybody is roughly singing the same tune. So Sunak met with Pichai, Altman, as well as a few others, and has basically said that the AI white paper written by Michelle Donnell, and I think we talked about a few months ago as well, is now completely out of date because it talks about things like bias and like the implementation in workplaces, again, from a Tory
fuck
perspective.
That shit. Not interested in that Skynet. When is it going to launch the missiles?
And if you think, and this is not confined to the Tories at all, like Labour for the Long Term, which is a long-termist Labour pressure group, which we should talk about.
That's a fucking horrible vibe.
Like Nick Bostrom and Keir Starmer hanging out and just talking about. Yeah,
Christ.
AI Milo, your turn. Anyway, so they're all trying to enshrine. Like everybody agrees on enshrining this kind of artificial intelligence-driven Whiggism more or less into all forms of government. So David Davis, another Tory, said, the whole question of responsibility and liability has to be tightly defined. Let's say I dismiss you from a job on the basis that the AI recommends I do so. Am I still liable for that action?
That's a revealing example, I would say. That's saying the quiet part a little bit louder than necessary, because like most of what we're worried about AI is not so much Skynet and more about it like automating all of your phony baloney jobs, right? And the idea that like, oh, well, if I use this to do that, am I like on the hook for it in an employment tribunal or whatever? That's an interesting question to be asking at this point.
If you get kicked off your corporate podcast because an AI replaces you,
do you get severance? Are you obliged to like if they make an AI out of your voice, does that count as you training your replacement?
So it's also, this is the other way that a lot of these people see AI, which is a layer. That's how they want to see AI, which is a layer between powerful decision makers and the consequences of their actions. Because you can say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the computer. Computer said no. Friend computer said no. Here is labor. Lucy Powell, spokesperson for digital culture, media, and sports, said the AI white paper is a sticking plaster, relying on overstretched regulators to manage multiple impacts will allow huge areas to fall through the gaps. That's probably true. But again, the areas she's talking about are Skynet areas.
Sure.
And then Darren Jones from the Business Select Committee said, we need the UK to promote an international and host an international AI agency along the lines of the IAEA. All of this
the AI IAEA.
Yeah, the EIEIO.
The IAIA. Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, that's such a.
I mean, this is the thing. It's not a global concern until you have a very unwieldy acronym. And I mean, I'm not against that. I'm not against regulation. I'm definitely not against like world regulation of these things, or indeed much else. It's just. It's pretty clear where the attempt is here to like get a lever over this before it gets started, right?
Well, it's the what I noticed from the US, what I noticed here is that most sides of the political spectrum across the Atlantic and also elsewhere in like Canada, Australia and stuff are pretty much agreed that the main threat is Skynet, and that the way to do that to prevent Skynet, at least the way in the U.S. they're talking about preventing Skynet, is onerous licensing for like having a certain amount of compute. And then over here, we're still mooting how it would work. But I'll talk about with the AI bigwigs. These guys.
That's so convenient, first of all, to be like, we have to protect these guys' existing business. Once they're in, we got to like seal it off completely around them.
They would never do Skynet.
Yeah, because otherwise, if we don't do that, if we don't enshrine them as a monopoly now, Skynet will happen.
So, Altman basically gave his vision of what he thinks that this regulatory vision should be. He says that governments have to work to smooth the integration of superintelligence with society, either by setting up
not a thing yet, not even guaranteed that it's going to be a thing, not inevitable. But this is the thing, right? I think this is an attempt to like craft the narrative, not just in a hype way, right? I think this is a way that like we have decided what the program is going to be, right? And Riley, you and I have spoken about this. This is going to be the subject of the next episode, is like the ideology and the ideological implications of that. But what strikes me about this is it's an attempt to say superintelligence, like general AI, whatever you want to call it, whatever we actually get. Whether it works or not, whether it works as intended, whatever the effects of it are, we are going to call it that. And we are going to understand it within the framework of those things, regardless of what it actually does. This is the narrative now.
Yeah, it's if you are enough of a wig, right, anything will seem like a god that we built eventually.
Yeah.
If you get the microchip small enough, if you add enough compute, and again, like there are lots of like quite lively debates and like the philosophy of mind and stuff that it is really just about a sufficient amount of computing power. But there
are lively debates in the like the sort of like the fab side of this about whether this can be made. Like there are sort of like we don't know the answer to that, and I'm not against regulation in a precautionary sense, because of course I'm not. But I think you have to like pay attention to the sort of the philosophical implications here of being like, we are going to regulate this ahead of time, and in so doing, we are going to very strictly define anything that happens is AI now.
Well, indeed, and I'll go through more of what they say they want. So Altman and co. have written that they think that, you say governments should work to smooth the integration of superintelligence with society, or collectively agree that the rate of growth in AI capability should be limited to a certain rate per year. It should never stop, but it should be limited to a rate per year. A bit like
cool,
inflation.
We got a whole new line. Yeah. We're doing sort of like stonks on AI.
And that there needs to be something like the International Atomic Energy Agency for like AI and compute. So that idea is just it's just made its way into the regulators. These guys have just walked in to like Washington and to Westminster, did like a little fun thing with ChatGPT, like when we made those fake Keir Starmer speeches, and now they're like, just write the law. Just go ahead and write the law. I'm sure you'll do it well.
Keir Starmer saw one of the fake speeches. He was like, "Oh my fucking god! We need to stop this shit right now."
He felt in that moment the same way I felt when we found out about the AI podcast thing.
So they also said what they don't think it should apply to. These are the Sam Altman and co. They said, today's systems create tremendous value in the world, and while they do have risks, the level of those risks feels commensurate with other internet technologies, and society's likely approaches seem appropriate. But if you're talking about like risks posed by other internet technologies, everyone is insane and depressed now because because other internet technologies that we had just basically wormed their way into people's lives and gave them all mental illness.
Yeah, but all of that shit, all of the like social trust shit, that's not important, because what we've got to be worrying about is 8-foot-tall metal skeletons with laser guns. Yeah.
Like the technology we have has made a certain subset of the population. I do think like fervent Q belief or whatever is akin to a kind of like being quite mentally unwell, and we didn't need AI for that. That's the result of mass alienation. That's the result of an incredibly weak society that causes people to become terrified of one another and to latch on to increasingly sort of deranged visions of reality. And so the idea of saying, well, those risks feel commensurate with other internet technologies, that feels like, well, hang on. The risks of other internet technologies that we brought in were quite significant, not because they were inherently risky, but because we are so unable to absorb even a small shock to our incredibly fucking sick polity.
Absolutely.
It says, by contrast, the systems we are concerned about, they say, will have power beyond any technology yet created, and we should not be careful to water down the focus on them by applying similar standards to technology below this bar.
Oh, I absolutely see where the fix is there. Okay. And if anything, I find that a little bit heavy-handed. That's quite like, do not look behind this curtain,
Yeah, well, also, like, we talk about, even if you don't want to talk about similar similar, you might say, watershed technologies, like sort of like smartphones and social media. If you want to talk about just AI, right? If you want to talk about the AI risks, the AI risk is not superintelligence. It's the fact that an eating disorder charity fired all of its call center staff, replaced them with a chatbot. The chatbot encouraged them to kill themselves.
Yeah.
That's a risk. That's not superintelligence.
We listen to too many AI podcasts.
Yeah. That is a real, actual risk to actual identifiable people.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because that's not an existential threat. And on on the long view, right, me and Keir Starmer are out here fucking the 10,000-year clock. And while we're doing that, we're thinking, that doesn't matter. What matters is the survival of the species, which could be jeopardized by this, but like infinity times smarter, which we're pretty certain is happening any day now.
Yeah, because like it doesn't matter if the AI that you're creating like makes people miserable. If anything, you sort of want that to happen because without that miserable population, who's going to listen to your AI enhanced podcasts?
So who's going to like? Well, that's its economic function too. Is it's going to immiserate people by like automating their jobs and making the product of work worse? Like that's what it's for.
But also like the embedded into like the ideology behind this is just the idea that like the actual AI stuff that is going to make people more miserable. I think the eating disorder charity is like a really good example of that. But even just like all these types of AI tools that you can see that are designed to like optimize like workflow, for example, or like will be implemented into Amazon warehouses or in like various sorts of other like gig economy jobs that are created out of this. Like they don't see this as the existential threat, and neither does like this government or the British government in particular, who I imagine are also quite interested in this in part because like they're sort of desperate for any kind of tech industry to like latch onto, right? Like that's the impression that I got from like
sorry.
I mean, all I was going to say was that the impression that I got from like Starmer and his team, and like they're interested in this. I think actually one of them did say something about like, oh, we think that Britain can be like a leader in sort of like AI technologies, and so we have like an economic investment into this, as well as like and part of our kind of concerns about its risks is because we want to create like a healthy economy in which like good AI can be created. I think that was like a very, very cheap paraphrase of it, so I'm not sure whether like they exactly said that. But
look, this is the reason that every British politician has to say that, of course, is it goes even back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, is the incredibly insular and self-referential structure of British media and politics, which is that as soon as something is a big topic that someone says something about, everybody needs an opinion on it. And so we were going to be a world leader in cryptocurrency a couple of years ago, if you remember.
Oh, Bitcoin, yeah.
Yeah, we were going to have Bitcoin. We were going to have a Royal Mint NFT. And again, like I think that the people who say that AI is exactly the same as crypto, like, yeah, it's got the same kind of hype cycle and a lot of the same people are into it. But what I've always said is this is actually valuable to capital because it allows them to discipline labor more, right? But it's to the British politician, to the underdeveloped brain of a British politician, it's all just the next shiny thing that we need to be a world leader in because it's happening and we should be going where the stuff is. And that leads us, of course, to see the EU's regulatory stance on AI, which almost caused Sam Altman to threaten, well, it did cause Sam Altman, in fact, to threaten to pull OpenAI out of Europe, right? Because there was actually...
Bullshit, call his bluff, and I'm glad the EU did.
Yeah, and then the U.S. vision, which, of course, the U.S. is never going to be able to properly regulate it, because how do you coordinate that between states and the federal level? Is the UK saying, oh, we're going to be the middle power. We're going to have, like, let 1,000 chatbots bloom, let 1 million data center, where we used to have... Yeah.
But every 3 months, someone with an eating disorder is torn apart by an AI. But I mean, basing the EIEIO, or whatever we're fucking calling it, in the UK would like be a genuine geopolitical coup, because it's gonna be a very influential thing if it becomes like a regulatory body. On the other hand, imagine basing it in this country with these politicians, and in a timeline where like all of them have a Neuralink installed.
So. This is it's like you take the place where we used to have, the factory that got torn down, and what got built in its place was a call center, which got torn down. What was built in its place was an Amazon warehouse, and that got then emptied out and now hosts a giant data center. And that's a little bit, I think, what the fantasy is, right? Which is if we just put enough faith in a Whiggish view of technology, we're not going to have to do difficult politics.
Sure.
We're going to grab onto the hype cycle at the right time, just like we did with the steam loom. We're going to do exactly that again, or just like we did with...
They talk about it in those terms of like a new industrial revolution, right? Like, not a more equitable one, by the way, when people say that. They just say new industrial revolution. I'm like, interesting. What happened to the last ones?
Oh, don't worry about it. What was it powered by? Who was required to... Whose labor was required to create a
movement of popular? No, okay.
some kind of I think a rhombus trade in the Atlantic. I don't remember exactly what it was. Anyway, but by the way, in case you're interested, the EU regulations are essentially that heavy transparency requirements, such as disclosing if something is generated by AI, but also publishing summaries of copyrighted data used for training.
Yeah, I really like this because, like, I think it's a useful weapon against AI. One of the only useful things you can use copyright for, I would say, is where did you get this from? Who did it, like chasing it around like a dog that has something in its mouth? Like, where is this from?
And then there are a number of things that they want to prohibit AI being used for, just most policing and biometric things, as well as emotion recognition systems. scraping, creating like facial recognition like databases, like the things that cause, again, AI companies to say, oh, we don't want to go be there because you won't let us do anything fun, and we'll have to say when we stole something. But I think to round all this off, actually, I want to read an article by Ian Martin in the Times, which is entitled, "To Defend the West, We Must Win the AI Race. Pausing is not an option."
NatSec angle. Thank you. I am rubbing my hands with glee.
Yeah. Pausing is not an option when allowing autocracies to gain superiority in these technologies could spell disaster. Albert Einstein, this is a very heavy-handed article, by the way.
Sure.
Albert Einstein came to regret his warning to Roosevelt in 1939. The Germans had split the atom, he wrote, and the Nazis could try to create nuclear weapons. Roosevelt quickly mobilized America's elite universities and authorized the Manhattan Project. The letter triggered a chain reaction in the U.S. government that led to Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the Cold War arms race, with Einstein eventually telling Newsweek, "Had I known that the Germans would not succeed, I would have done nothing." Well, perhaps, but staying silent would have risked the Soviet Union or the Nazis getting there first. So basically, Ian Martin is saying, look, it turns out, it was better to have the world on the brink of destruction and sort of still being on the brink of destruction.
Yes, still is, yes.
It's to think of the Cold War nuclear arms race as a kind of, well, I guess we should do it again, but on the computer. Like, if you actually believe that AI is going to do Skynet, and your answer is just, well, I guess it's Skynet, I suppose. Better our Skynet than theirs.
Well, if he is leaning into it, then there is a sort of logical conclusion to this, which is, if we're doing balance of terror stuff with AI, the same as we do for nuclear weapons, you can't have a mutually assured destruction without the mutual part. So what you should be advocating for, and I expect to see this in the coming paragraphs, is a ruthless program of spying on the part of the People's Republic of China to build up indigenous AI capacity, so that like everyone has it, and now we're in sort of like balance. Because it's most dangerous if like, we have it and they don't, right? Under that logic. So
the argument, of course, here being that the most dangerous part of the Cold War was just after 1945, just before the Soviets had their own bomb.
Yeah.
When the US was like, we can do fucking anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it says, the bomb and the debate on whether its invention was unstoppable will be big this summer. Through their labors, mankind acquired the godlike capacity to all but eliminate life on Earth. And like, this, I mean, how are you an AI booster? How do you read this as an AI booster and think what I am doing is good, unless you have the belief that they all have, which is the premise of, almost the premise of the Turing letter, the premise of a self-improving algorithm has taken on a life of its own outside of humanity, and almost like a kind of world spirit is going to instantiate itself no matter what. And so at least we can trust ourselves to do it responsibly. It is genuinely a belief in the ghost in the machine that is trying to exist.
It's all different levels of like Elon Musk hitting on Grimes with Rocco's Basilisk, a thing which neither of them really understand and which is stupid anyway.
And I always go back to this idea of AI as the opposite of the printing press, right? Because what actually, let's leave aside the Skynet thing, right? If you talk about the risks that that Ian Martin is talking about, right? He says, within 20 years, our food may be managed by AI. Decisions about what to grow, whether to manufacture more or fewer fish fingers, and where to deliver them will be made with little human involvement. Replicate this in the management of the power grid and undersea cables, which are all eminently hackable and all requiring robust national defense. Which I then have to ask, why then seed them? Why is it that the working out of the machine spirit has to then be given undersea cables, national defense, and the fish
inevitable.
finger?
It's inevitable because of how much more efficient it would make the fish fingers. I'm often saying the fish finger distribution is inefficient, so no choice but to do Skynet.
I feel like the impression I'm sort of getting from this is I think we sort of like touched on it like not long ago, where it's about like having the race to have like the take on it. So he's imagining a type of AI that is basically self-governing, right? It sort of seems like the fear, which is very much like the Rocco Basilisk fear. It's just like, oh, this machine, like this system will just kind of like self-govern and have all the sort of like existential threats that come with it. And therefore, but like it to me, this is really confusing because it's just sort of like, yeah, but people do manage the AI and people do create it. And like, there is sort of like a lineage that sort of goes into the design of it. And the AI that you're imagining is not really the AI that exists and is being advocated for. If anything, the AI that you're imagining, like the actual sort of AI boosters who are all the AI tech guys that are going to benefit from it, don't want that either. So it feels like you're sort of talking about the wrong thing.
Well, he, like so many Times writers, what he's doing is he's reacting to the marketing poster as opposed to the thing substantially.
This is why I sort of feel, it feels very jarring because it's sort of like, but yeah, you're talking about something that isn't going to happen. Not because it doesn't have the potential to, or that like the technology doesn't, because it could very well, like, that stuff could develop. It's just that it's not going to develop for lots of sort of reasons that aren't really about tech. And much more to do with like how the kind of who accumulates the capital in the tech space.
Like any NatSec thing, the angle here I think is okay. Well, obviously we wouldn't make Skynet, but what if China made Skynet? Because I don't know, they just felt like it.
If the West and its allies fail to emerge as the winners of the AI race, yes, of course, because they're racing to make Skynet because we're racing to make Skynet, so we have to race faster to make Skynet.
Of course.
Skynet's getting made. Look, first of all, let's just
listen. There's gonna be a Skynet, and when there is, we better have an American flag on it.
If the West and its allies fail to emerge as the winners of the AI race, we'll be at the mercy of dictators who can swarm us with 20,000 drones communicating with each other rather than humans.
Hold on. We're already at the mercy of dictators because, like, as we have seen, there are dictatorships with nuclear weapons. Like,
yeah, but what if worse? What if it was world destroying?
How would that be worse? What could possibly be worse?
Skynet? Big scary skeleton Terminator? I mean, it's okay. There already is the balance of terror. How do you, as you say, how do you make it more? Like vast computer power can relentlessly search for weaknesses through which to launch cyber attacks or shut down our financial system or turn off the lights.
I will say this, to undercut myself a bit. There already is we already have balance of terror at home because we already have nuclear weapons, most of which are controlled by like a guy with a switch under a bunker in Montana or whatever. Like, you can't say, oh well, if China invents Skynet, they're gonna like entirely fuck us over and we'll be powerless. Because what if we say, okay, well if you do Skynet to us, we'll nuke you. What if that?
Well, that actually, again, that's already is the policy. Like, it's already pretty clear that
like, the US has already made very clear that would be an act of war. Sure, of course.
Yeah. So I don't really.
So what's new? Nothing other than just like we have to do Skynet because it would make me feel bad if we didn't.
This is an example of someone upon whom the marketing of like the scare-vertising has worked entirely. And of course it has, because this is a British media creature. Like this is a form of life upon which advertising fucking works. Much of the debate has centered so far on the question of whether the machines will come to be cleverer than their masters and develop feelings and desires. My concern is not so much the questions of machines becoming sentient. Human sentiment and feeling will still be powerful in art, culture, creativity, the search for sublime, etc. There are enormous ethical dilemmas confronting our leaders. We hear a lot from them about climate change and from the global industry dedicated to stopping it. But the need to beat autocracies in the AI arms race and work out how by the process how we might retain human control is bigger than that, and the key challenge. It's a dangerous race and we have to win. We are going to break the 1.5 degrees warming like 2 months from now. How is this the bigger problem?
Also, who says we're staying democracies, given the sort of like incipient rise of the far right, more or less everywhere? Like, what if it just becomes a contest between like two different forms of autocracy? I won't care because I'll be getting bulldozed into a mass grave at that point. But like, just as an academic question, what if that?
American flag on it. British. It's gonna have a Union Jack, won't it? On Brit Skynet.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I always figured that like if America went like explicitly fascist or Britain went explicitly fascist, we would do the sort of Hearts of Iron thing and change the flag to look more evil.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big computer chip on it instead of like the crossed Kalashnikovs, because that's gonna be what's actually more dangerous.
Damn, crazy.
Anyway. But I just to sort of round
just
this
had a
out.
cursed thought.
Okay, go ahead.
Which I can pitch to the Times as a column, which is, when are we going to have one of those international hazard symbols like the radiation triangles, but for like computer cognition? When are we going to have a sticker that you can like slap on the side of a computer case to indicate, hey, this thing's got feelings?
All right. Well, let's just
Someone
generate one of
design
those.
that, and yeah, let's make one of those and sell it as stickers.
Well, this computer has mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, a hazard triangle with like this computer has mental health. Print it.
Yeah.
Patent pending.
So
Patent pending.
Check on your chips or whatever. I don't know.
Check on your chips. Perfect. Okay, can't do it. Anyone making a shirt out of that, we're gonna fucking sue you.
Yeah, we will take that as an act of war.
Yeah, we will nuke you. Anyway, yeah, just to round all this out, though, I think like it's something that, you know, to continue to sort of, you will, once you see it, notice it everywhere in these discussions. You will see the discussion of the dangers of AI every time it's talked about in government be steered away from identifiable impacts on identifiable people and onto theoretical impacts on theoretical people, but the impacts are so extreme that they outweigh the identifiable impacts on identifiable people. And it is nothing new under the sun. It's something that sort of our various governments have done more or less forever, right? But you know, you are not going to stop seeing it. Anyway, I think that's all there is for today. So I want to thank you all for listening, thank my wonderful co-hosts for being here with me, and remind you that there is a Patreon. It is for $5. You can get an extra episode every week. For $10, you can get an additional 2 on top of that. An extra Britanology and an extra Writtenology.
We should add a sort of like a very high tier at like a sort of $1 million mark where you just gain access to the AI that like replicates us. You can just generate as many episodes as you want to listen to.
You can't release them though.
I mean, the future is also just like getting your favorite hosts on one podcast to do another episode of a show of one of your other favorite shows, right?
Oh yeah, you could get us to do Well There's Your Problem.
Yeah,
that's right. What is this, a crossover episode?
Fuck, that's gonna happen as well. Shit.
Yeah. If you, we'll just go on each other's podcast. You don't need to generate it with AI. Anyway.
The pod save Johns are gonna do Trashfuture, and
what do you say, AI Liam?
Anyway.
Yeah, that's what
other
says.
Things. Oh yeah, other things.
The soy face noise.
Other things. There is a stream Thursdays and Mondays on Twitch. You can watch it.
You can watch it by plugging slop.delivery into your browser.
That's right. Milo's probably doing shows. You can go on his website. I'm sure it will be linked. And anything else? I think we're good. All right. We will see you on the bonus episode in a couple of days. Bye, everyone.
Bye.